Well, I've just had the 1-year anniversary of a major change in my life. Yes, it was moving houses, but it was also changing from iMac to PC. One of the things that I didn't do during that change was configure my photo printer with the new PC. I just left it because I wasn't printing anything at the time, and I'd sort of stopped printing stuff. I had a lot of other stuff on my plate. Well, about a month ago, I decided to print a couple of images, and I was actually shocked at how dark they were. And I should know better. I've been doing this a long time, but I just thought that the new monitors would be pretty well calibrated. The iMac never needed much calibration at all. It was always pretty close whenever I used a calibrator. And so I'd stopped using calibration and just using the monitor self-calibration to give me the best results. Well, of course, once I started printing, it's sort of become pretty evident that my images were much darker than I expected. And so, a lot of test prints, and this is what you do when you first print. I quite often do little test prints on some A4 paper, and then I was hitting up the brightening in the printer software or control module to try and brighten the prints up. But what I also then realized was that maybe I was looking at my monitors way too bright, and I could do with dimming them down. So before I got the calibration device, I've got one here. We're going to calibrate today. We've got the SpyderX Elite, which is by Datacolor. I bought that on Amazon, and I'm going to calibrate my monitors. But what I did do is I dropped my monitor brightness from near 100% down to 25%. Now, when I first did that, everything looked really, really dark. But when I started looking at my images on other devices, like my iPad or my iPhone or other people's PCs, they actually look pretty bright. But when I printed them, they printed out really nicely. So I think the lesson is a lot of us have our monitors or our iPads or our phones up way too bright, or we have auto brightness on our devices. And what this means is that we're going to see things a lot brighter than they actually are. And when it comes to printing, of course, a monitor is a backlit display. So it's either little tiny LED lights, or it's a backlit display of some sort that will be illuminating all of the pixels for you to view. And so it really gives you a false misrepresentation, even if you have the soft proofing on. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to calibrate my monitors. I think I've actually got them pretty close, because one of the things that I did do after I sort of discovered that was going on was I went through and I used this particular one here, which is a great little test print. As you can see, it's got all the colors and things on there. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's got all the colors and things on it, and allows you to really set the brightness, the contrast, etc. But you can't beat calibrating your monitors. If you're going to do dedicated printing at home, or you're going to send your photos off to a lab for printing, you're best to calibrate, because they will calibrate their printers using something similar, a much more sophisticated device, but it will follow the same methodology, which means that you'll end up with what you see on your screen relatively similar being printed. Once again, it's going to be slightly different because monitors aren't paper, and it does make a little bit of difference as to what paper you use. So anyway, let's get to it. I'm going to walk you through the calibration process, and we'll talk through what I'm doing as I go through it, and it'll be interesting to see what the difference is. So let's kick off by getting this out of the box and setting it up. They're pretty straightforward. There's not a lot to it, and there's a lot of videos, of course, already on YouTube showing you how to do this. Got to download software. This is the classic thing these days. No one has CD-ROM drives anymore, so we've got to download the software, so it's telling me where to do that. And then the actual device itself is relatively straightforward. Now, this device will not sit on the computer full time. You just use this device. It'll hang over the top of the monitor like so, and you'll just use it when you're calibrating, and you can adjust the length of that, no doubt. And the software will bring up a spot on the screen where we calibrate it. So it's a relatively simple device. It has an external sort of eye for ambient light, so I can measure ambient light, and then you just plug it into a USB on the back of your PC. It's best not to use a USB port, because you won't get the same sort of a connection. So you want to put the USB directly into the back of your computer, and then just follow the instructions. So I'm going to download the software now, which is at go to datacolor.com, get SpyderX. So let's do that now. Should be relatively straightforward. Go to .datacolor, and of course Google is going to tell me a predetermined URL. Activate your SpyderX calibration tool. So we're doing that now, pretty straightforward. Congratulations, isn't that nice of them? This page will help you install your SpyderX calorimeter and software, as well as cover the best resources for support. Okay, warm up your monitor. So that is super important. I've had these monitors on for about an hour now, and you want to make sure that it's at least 30 minutes. That's what it tells you to do here. It says to download and install the SpyderX software using the links below. So let's do that now. I've got the SpyderX Elite, so I need the Elite software, which is for Windows. So I'm just going to click on that now. It's opening up in another window, so let's save that as in my downloads. Done. Now the difference, I believe, between the Elite and the standard version of the calibrator is that with the Elite it can do multiple monitors, which is why I've purchased this, because I do have the 2 monitors. And I do, when I'm working and processing my photos, quite often I'll have things going in both monitors. So has that downloaded? Looks like it has. Can we get that going? All right. Yes, I trust this. We're going to do it in English. Fantastic. Now I probably should shut everything else down because we probably don't need everything else going. Okay, next. Please do not plug in the Spyder prior to installing the software. If the Spyder is currently connected, please unplug it. No, don't need to worry about that. You're going to put it in that folder, that's fine. We're going to call it data color, that's fine. All right, it's now doing the install. Perfect. Pretty easy. Maybe we just need some thinking music or a cup of coffee. All right, now the software has finished installing and I've plugged the data color SpyderX into the computer. It tells you to plug that in before you open the software, and it also tells you not to use an external USB port like a USB extension port or something like that, to plug it directly into your USB ports on the rear of your computer, or if you have some on the front, but definitely those that are actually on your computer is important. So I'm going to open the software now and we'll just see what it asked me to do. It says really not any other instructions here, so I'm hoping that it gives us all the instructions we need on screen. So it's saying welcome. This software will enable you to blah 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 blah. Okay, we don't need to say that again. We say okay. Now it says please make sure your Spyder sensor is plugged into your USB port. It only takes a few moments to activate your copy of SpyderX Elite. Ensure you have a genuine copy of the software. Okay, next. So it's going to ask me for the serial form number that is inside of the box. So we're going to put that in now. All right, activation successful. It's now telling me to print my license code because you need this if you're going to reinstall the software. So it's hopefully they've emailed it to me as well, because that's a pretty archaic way of doing things anyway. So it's now registered. Hit finish. Now it says, would you like the application to automatically check for software updates? Yes, I would. So calibrate my displays, and as you can see, I've got 2 displays. I don't know how it's going to manage that, but let's see what it does. Let's do that. So I've done the warm-up, so it's got a bit of a checklist here for me. Lighting, have you checked that no intense light is falling directly on your display screen? So I'm going to turn off the light I have on up there, which will make things a little bit darker, but yeah, but that's these lights here. So I do have 2 of those. I'll just switch that off. The other thing is I've got, I've got light coming through the windows. It's not too bad today. It's overcast out there, so I think it's okay. Display controls, have you reset your monitor settings? So reset contrast to default, set the color temperature to 6500 or equivalent, adjust the brightness to the level which you are comfortable. So I'm going to set the brightness where I want it. I'm going to do contrast to, what does it say? Contrast to default settings. Well, it's at 50. I'm going to call that default. My brightness is at 25. It was much higher before, so let's call that done. Okay, so we've done that. Plug the Spyder into a USB port. Yeah, so it says here, plug the Spyder into a computer USB port, not into a hub or keyboard. Okay, done. Next. All right, so I had to stop the video to do a bit of research. I've got the manufacturer's website up with all the specifications of my monitor because SpyderX Elite was asking me a lot of very difficult to answer questions. Namely, it was asking me about the display technology, and I had to choose what the display technology was, which was quite difficult. I've just gone with standard LED because I can't really see anywhere where it tells me what type of display it is in all of the specifications. So I'm going to I'm going to go with what it says is the most common, which is, I think it said standard LED, or you can select general if you're not sure, but I'm going to go with standard LED. It's got wide LED and it's got GB LED. I don't really understand what they are, but let's just hit next. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Studio Match, because I've got 2 monitors. That's why I bought the Elite. So there's a step-by-step assistant, Studio Match or Expert Console. We'll go with Studio Match. Next, match display. So choose your settings to match different displays as closely as possible. Match display is attached to just this computer. So you can actually then use this if you've got like a laptop or another computer in the house, or maybe you've got a few in your office that you like to use for doing different things, and you can, obviously you can have them all calibrated so they're exactly the same, which is great. So it's asked me to choose which displays. It can obviously sense that I've got these 2, so I've just got both ticked. Let's go to next. Now it says, let's measure the maximum brightness that each monitor is capable of producing. Okay. So it's asking me to place the spider on the display. So this is where I've got to take this out. I'm going to have to move it around. I'm going to place it on the screen. So it has this little, you might have to, in some instances too, I have heard about this, because my monitors are sort of leaning forward a bit, this is the way I have them, you might have to angle them back if you can move them around and try and see if it works like that. But my monitors are curved, so it's actually a bit of a pain. Wondering if I should peg that onto there. You know what I'm thinking? I should get something to peg that onto there, and that way it would definitely stay on the top, because it's not, every time I let go of that cable it's moving. So I'm going to go and grab something just to peg it on, and then we'll see if that helps. I am back and I've got a peg. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to peg that on, because I think it's going to hold that a bit closer, which is good. Now that I've done that, so it's placed the spider on the display as shown, set the brightness control to maximum, and then click measure. So we need to go into the settings, to brightness, go to maximum, and it's just doing its thing. It's like a bit of a disco going on, isn't it? Measuring completed. Remove your spider and click finish. Okay. Now it wants me to do it on the other one, which is no surprise, I guess. All right, it's now telling me to put the spider on the desk and make sure I have no intense light falling directly on my display screen, which, besides my room light and the windows being open, I don't have anything else on, so it should be fine. It's now going to measure my room light and suggest the brightness targets that fits best to the room light conditions. Okay, let's do that. I've sort of skipped a whole bunch of, because it's just measuring stuff, you don't want to see all of this. Essentially just follow the instructions as it comes up on screen. I'm now adjusting the brightness. It's now doing its own calibration and measuring. I've no idea how it actually works, but it's doing its thing. As you can see, the screen's moving around and changing colours and brightnesses, and I guess it's calibrating. So it'd be interesting to see how the printing goes afterwards, because like I said, some of the printing I had done was not exciting me, so I'm hoping this is going to fix that. Right, well, the process is now complete. Went through a little bit of a funny colour matching sort of exercise to make sure that my perception of the colours were the same on both monitors, and I'm not sure if I have to keep this connected. My original spider that I had many years ago, used to keep it in a dock on the desk, and it would measure ambient light every, I think, 15 minutes or so and tell you if something drastically changed in your room. That meant that you were going to need to use some adjustments for your monitors. I'm going to just keep it plugged in for the time being. I've got plenty of USB ports, so I'm going to put it on the desk, and I'll just see what it does over time, because maybe it's needed, I don't know. But it'll just sit there on the desk. So that's the SpyderColor X Elite Data Color. Pretty simple to set up, and my monitors are now calibrated. I'm going to now do some printing and just see what happens. So I think what I'll do is I'll bring up Lightroom, I'll pick an image, I'll print it out, and we'll have a look at it. So let's do that now, because really that's the test, is to see if those changes meant that my printing was a little bit more accurate. So I'll get this same image up actually, because this is the one that I was struggling with. So this is an image As you can see, it's quite a small test print, but it was coming out quite dark, and I was slowly lightening it up. And I mean, you can see the difference there in those two images there. They were adjusted using the print adjustment settings inside of Lightroom, just to try and lighten it up before I printed it. And I always do test prints if I can on smaller or less expensive paper. So this is just an A4 photo paper. Although it's not the best paper, because it's just some standard HP paper you get from Officeworks from the local stationery supplies, it's good enough just to sort of do test prints on to give you a bit of an idea of what to expect. So let's I'll get that image up and we'll do some printing and just see how it goes. When it comes to printing images out of Lightroom, it's pretty simple, and there's lots of different tutorials online on how to get the best results. But essentially all you want to do is, in the develop module down the bottom, you want to click the soft proofing, and then you want to make sure you select the right paper type. So I've got a glossy photo paper selected, and I'm ticked the box which is simulate paper and ink. And you'll see as soon as you tick that, it vastly changes the way the image looks on screen. In this case, by ticking it, it's now making it a lot flatter and less vibrant. So what you can do is you make a proof copy, which is like a virtual copy in Lightroom, and then you can make some adjustments to that particular copy to try and bring back some of what you might have lost. If you need to look at the what it looked like before, you can look at your original one or click off the soft proofing, and that'll show you the difference between the two. And so, once again, I can see straight away that it doesn't have anywhere near as much contrast when I have the print done. So I'm going to add some contrast. I'm going to add a bit of brightness. Oh, a proof copy, there we go. Add some brightness. And it's just one of those things where you've got to play around a little bit to get it to where you like it. But what you see on screen now should be what prints. And I'm being a bit late, I'm sitting on the angle here. You want to look at it straight on if you can with your monitor. And just bring those highlights down. I'm going to bring those shadows up. Just trying to create that, that contrast that I had in my original image. So that's looking pretty good. Now I'm just going to print this 6x4, which is a good idea when you're first sort of doing this, because then you can just try and save as much ink as you can, because there will be times when you do this where it doesn't work, and you'll have to print several times, and it can be quite expensive and frustrating. Printer ink is very expensive, unfortunately. Anyway, all right, bit of dehaze just to give that the oomph that I want it to have. Yeah, and I might just cool it down a little bit. It's got a bit warm on me there. I like that. Yeah, that's looking pretty good now. I think I like that. All right, let's go with that. So once you've done that, you go across to print. Mine's already set up for 4x6 printing, and with a white border. So I'm pretty much just going to go into my printer settings now to make sure that I've got the right printer set. It's definitely set for the right one. It says status is ready. If I go into properties, it's going to bring up all my printer properties. That's going to be different depending on the printer that you're using, but it says photo paper glossy. It should be the same if you've got your printer installed correctly. It tells me it's a 4x6 borderless. I'm actually putting a border around it, but I'm doing that using Lightroom. The page layout is good to check as well, but everything looks fine. So just say OK, and then when you're ready, you just say OK, and it will just print away. All right, well, the print is complete. I don't know how well you can see that. They're trying to get rid of the reflections. There we go. And as you can see, it's done a pretty good job. Looks pretty much like what's on the screen. Once again, it's always going to be difficult with something on the screen because it is an LED backlit screen. So that's where you can make other adjustments if you want. When you send your job to the printer, there's a little box down the bottom right-hand side of your print module, and you can tick print adjustment, and you can add more brightness if you want. So for example, if the particular paper you're printing on is not listed, so I don't have the ICC profiles loaded for this HP paper, and I know it prints a little bit darker than the Epson glossy photo paper. So I know that if I was to use the Epson paper, it would come up a little bit brighter, but it's much more expensive, so I don't tend to use it for test printing. and you'll just get used to what your printer does. And you know, once your monitors are all calibrated, at least you know that what you're looking at is a properly calibrated monitor with the right colors. And that way, if you're not doing your own home printing and you send these away to a lab, then you're going to end up with something very similar to what you saw on screen. Just keeping in mind that you are looking on a screen versus a printed document. Just a little bit of a bonus tip for you. One thing that I learned when I started doing this was this background on the on Lightroom. You can change the color of that by right-clicking it. If you put it as black, your image will appear brighter on the screen. If you have it as white, it will actually make your image look darker. And it's a optical illusion, but it's something that not a lot of people know, and it's something you need to be wary of. So I always have mine on the white setting. You could always put it on medium grey, which is the 18% grey, but I just keep it on white because white gives me the most probably the most accurate representation of the brightness from my eyes. And you probably need to play with that yourself. But yeah, it's just right-clicking on the background and then you can change the background color, and that's a little bit of a bonus tip for you. Now, hopefully you found this really helpful. If you haven't used the Calibrator before and you've been thinking about it, it might, you know, tip you over the edge. Has it made a huge difference to my screen? No, because I sort of managed to self-calibrate it, and you can do that by using these types of things. It's probably going to be more accurate. I probably should print that again just to see the difference in what it did. But I can just see by looking at this that the colors and the brightness are much better than what I had previously. So it's definitely done something there for me and got the results that little bit better. So if you've enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments how you're going with your calibration and your printing. Be interested to hear if you've got any other tips or tricks or things that you've done that have helped you when it comes to printing your images at home.